Here we go. That's better. So, hello and welcome to another Monday night Q&A. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Dan Smith, one of our regional engineering managers. Hello, Dan. How was your Monday?
All good, Sam. Busy. I think it's a busy time for us, isn't it? On the eve of the event number 2. We've got a lot going on, a lot of preparation. So no, all good, buzzing.
Yes, yeah. Just 2 weeks away now till a big event in our industry. So everybody I think is getting prepared. So as with all of our live sessions, I'll just run through a few house rules. We'll start off with our question of the week, which we posted out across social media channels earlier today. We'll go through our answers to that question. Then while you're putting up your questions in the chat, hopefully, we'll go through some of the questions we didn't get around to from previous QA sessions. Please remember, while you're putting your questions in the chat, remember that there's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers. And please remember to be respectful to each other in the chat, as the whole idea of this evening is that collectively we help each other with the overall aim of improving our collective knowledge and understanding of all things associated with 7671 and the world of electrical installation. So I'll just remind everybody about our question of the week. So we posted this out earlier today. Our question of the week was around: at which connection points should a label stating safety electrical connection, do not remove, be fitted for compliance with BS 7671? And the options given were the connection to an earth electrode, the connection to an extraneous conductive part, the connection to a remote main earthing terminal, or is it all of the above? And the answer is all of the above. If we actually go to that area of BS 7671, we'll see regulation 514.13.1, and that clearly states a durable label to BS 951 with the words safety electrical connection, do not remove, shall be permanently fixed to a visible position at or near the point of connection of every earthing conductor to an earth electrode, the point of connection of every bonding conductor to an extraneous conductive part, and the main earthing terminal where separate from main switchgear. And it's probably that last one. I think we did get a few mentions that it was too easy a question this week from some people. It is. I call it the Goldilocks effect. Our questions are either too hard or too easy. They're never just right. So some people saying it was too easy. But one thing we wanted to highlight is that it's ident 3. It's the situation where the main earthing terminal is separate from the main switchgear, though it's often missed. So typical example may be in a domestic installation where the distribution board, the main consumer unit, is away from the service head, but the MET will be around the service head because that's where the incoming earth is. And in that instance, it's quite often that those labels are forgotten. So we hope you got that. I think the answers when I looked at them at midday today were mostly correct. It was D, which would have been the answer for all of above. Okay. So while we're waiting for people to populate the chat, we'll go through some leftover questions. So this first one was a question left over from last week, and the question was: on a TT system, can an MCB without RCD protection be used? Let's start again. On a TT system, can an MCB without RCD protection be installed if the loop value is within limits? So what are our thoughts on that, Dan? Can we use an MCB for fault protection in a TT system?
At first it seems like, well, no, but you can. Under regulation 4115.1, it gives you two options. Obviously one or more of the following types of protective device shall be used, the former being preferred: indent 1 an RCD, indent 2 an overcurrent protective device. So an MCB can actually be used, but there is a note number 1 below the regulation that does actually state an appropriate overcurrent protective device may be used for fault protection provided a suitably low value of ZS is permanently and reliably assured. And it's those last two words there, reliably assured. So what does that mean? Obviously, you've got to guarantee that somehow. So if, for example, you were reliant on a utility service pipe work, which say, was not owned by the building owner and could therefore be removed without their knowledge or permission, then we would suggest that this isn't obviously permanently reliable. Whereas on the other hand, if you were, say, reliant on the structural steel of a building, which is owned by the building owner, then we would suggest that is an example where it is permanently reliable. So, you have to think about this one a little bit. Also need to consider other situations in addition to fault protection, such as the requirement to provide additional protection where it requires an RC protection. And there's also several special locations and installations conditions where the BSM 71 requires that enhanced protection of an RCD. So,
yeah, absolutely. So it is. It's if we just show the audience again that regulation, and as you said, it does say. So this is for the section for TT systems. One or more of the following types of protective device shall be used. The former being preferred, and then it gives us an RCD or an overcurrent protective device. And again, as you said, the note informs us that an appropriate overcurrent protective device may be used for fault protection, which is exactly what the question was asking, but it goes on to say provided a suitably low value of ZS is permanently and reliably assured. So yes, you have to take into consideration, okay, what's my fault loop path? Can I rely on it? It may be good right now while I'm measuring it, but is it going to stay that way? So yes, it's things like structural steel which aren't going to change unless there's some major changes in the building that the responsible person will be aware of. But yeah, we can't take the benefit of an extraneous conductive part that might get removed because it's not owned by the homeowners. So principle, yes, but there are some considerations, and then rightly, as you said, sometimes we have to provide an RCD because it's a requirement for additional protection, for example, in socket outlets, or it's a requirement of a special location, such as a bathroom where it's required. So those will supersede the requirements. Okay, another one that was that's been hanging around is do all socket outlets on a farm require RCD protection, or can I use the permitted exception of a documented risk assessment? So that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because in general we can use a documented risk assessment outside of domestic, but could I use it on a farm to prevent RCD protection being required?
Not a risk assessment. All socket outlets do have to be RCD protected. We have to really go to special locations, section 705 for this, which is agricultural premises. And what you'll find is regulation 705 411.1 will refer to the indents, if you like, and it will say states that in circuits, whatever the type of earthing system, the following disconnection devices shall be provided. And you got indent 1 in final circuit supplying socket outlets with a rated current not exceeding 32 amps, and RCD having the characteristics specified in regulation 41511 shall be met, or indent 2 in final circuit supplying socket outlets with a rated current more than 32 amps and RCD with a residual operating current not exceeding 100 milliamps, and indent 3 in all other circuits and RCDs with the rated residual operating current not exceeding 300 milliamps. So in all cases, the RCD's there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those ones where I remember the first time I got involved, it really does stick in the mind that, yeah, so any circuits with socket outlets up to 32 amp, 30 milliamp, any circuit with socket outlets over 32 amp is 100 milliamp, and then all other circuits 3 amp. So every type of circuit in a farm, a location, agricultural or horticultural, requires RCD protection because of the requirements of section 705. And what's the guidance with regards? There's something in part 4 telling us we've got an exception, but there's a specific requirement in 705. Which one takes precedent, Dan?
705. I mean, when you're dealing with special locations that are listed under part 7 of that, they are special for a reason. There's enhanced protection measures that have to be in place. So whilst you have to comply with parts 1 to 6, what you'll often find is obviously part 7 is a bolt onto that as well, and those will supersede those existing parts in various areas. And this is a prime example where it does that, where it's saying, well, actually no reassessments are allowable in every single case. There's an RCD somewhere in the distribution system. So
yeah, no, it's something that's always stuck with me since I remember days of supervisors and mentors saying that, yeah, you've read the right part in special locations, whether it be 701 or 705 or 710, but don't forget about complying with parts 1 to 6. But the additional requirements in the special location sections always take precedent over the general requirements of parts 1 to 6. Okay, a third question from the pack is, when fitting a double stack consumer unit, how do I comply with the requirement for all RCBOs to be within 1350 and 1450 above the floor level? So just to frame the question a little bit, there's a requirement in approved documents that tell us that the height of switches for our consumer unit should be between 1350 and 1450 from the finished floor in England. So when we've got a double stack unit, obviously there's going to be at least 100 mil between the two rows. How can I achieve that? Because some of them are going to be above and some are going to be below. So is there any guidance out there that helps us with that, Dan?
It actually is. It's from BEMA. Now, for those who don't know who BEMA are, get this right. It's the British Electrotechnical and Allied Manufacturers Association, who are basically the UK Trade Association for Manufacturers, and they've got actually a technical bulletin out which has recommended that for multi-role consumer units where compliance and mounting heights of approved documents cannot be achieved for all switches, the consumer unit should be mounted in such a way that the bottom row of the switches are located between the 1350 and 1450, so that they are out of reach like young children, and equally avoid interference from inappropriate operations. So so that's their guidance that they've actually issued on this. And there are obviously other heights from other parts that obviously you have to confirm, in Scotland and Wales, for example, which are slightly different as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact, isn't it? That it's I think we get a little bit blinkered into the area of the country that we work in. Yeah. And when some digging was done, this is one of those situations where there's a variation across. So in England, it's that distance is between 1350 and 1450 from the finished floor. In Wales, it's actually 1200 to 1400. In Scotland, it's above 1200. There's actually no it's no more than 1200, so that there's no bottom limit. And then in Northern Ireland, it's similar to Wales, it's between 1200 and 1400. So it does depend on which part of the UK you're working in, but also the guidance is that on a double stack you would do it with the bottom row of RCBOs or switches, so that you're complying with that requirement to prevent inadvertent operation by children, for example. Just a little bit on BEMA. I mean, BEMA do contribute to BS 7671, so there are BEMA representatives on the JPEL 64 panels, so they do contribute. And also, as an organisation, provide some good, useful, freely downloadable guides that are available from the BEMA website. I'm thinking of things like their guide to RCD protection. They do also have an AFDD guide, and many others. So there's plenty about, and a good source of information. It's not specifically product driven, although the individual members of BEMA have obviously got their own product allegiance. But yeah, the overall BEMA documents are generic, so it's their RCD guide covers all RCDs. It's not product specific. Okay, one more. Again, this one's a common one. Can I use an electrical installation condition report to record remedial work? What's our thoughts on that, Dan?
This is sadly a very common one that we often get out in the field. No, it's a condition report. One's a report, one's a certificate. So your certificate is carry out following installation works, but you are purely reporting on the condition of an existing installation. So no, it's only to be used for that purpose. And further, if any watchers use our NOC system, the NIC online certification system, our DPN, our IPN 18C certs, there's the very last page is a notes for recipients, and it does actually have a nice little footnote for this. And it does actually say this report form is intended to be issued only for the purposes of reporting on the condition of an existing installation, and must not be issued to certify new electrical installation work, including electrical installation, and must not be issued to certify new electrical installation work, including the replacement of consuming unit or distribution board. So that has been asked. And obviously, just to add to that, obviously the report is invalid if any of the schedules that are identified in Part 10 are missing as well. So not people look at the notes in the back, but it is all there as well. So
yeah, and it has to be stated that if the remedial work requires an electrical installation certificate or a minor works because the remedial works involves additions or alterations to the installation, then you'll need to provide the correct certification in accordance with regulations section 644 to be compliant with BS 7671. So a lot of people think, oh, but it's more paperwork. Well, it's because they've got different purposes. The condition report is, as it says on the tin, that's there to provide information about the condition of the installation, and in particular its safety for continued use. But the installation certificates and minor work certificates are there to say exactly what additions and alterations have been made, and to confirm that the relevant safety checks have been done, and it's been installed or altered in accordance with 7671. So yeah, we still need to do that level of certification where it's required. Okay, we'll start to pick up some questions out of the chat now. The first one I can see perhaps a bit more of a discussion point. So, hi guys, having issues with a cut-out cartridge holder found on an inspection with a section of aluminium tube with no markings in place of a fuse. The installation is in a high-rise building in a red fuse holder. We are waiting on contact from the BNO as we don't have access to the origin yet. I have pictures if this helps. Okay, so this is coming from one of the engineers tonight. What I would say, it's not always the case, but generally the red fuse holders were actually used as, often referred to as a red head, were used as a point of isolation rather than a point for providing a protective device. So you're absolutely right to check with the BNO, the building network operator, because either they've installed it as such, or perhaps previous to them it was the distribution network owner for that area of the country. But yeah, you will often find, I've found copper slugs, copper bullets in those, because they were there as a mechanism to provide a means of isolation rather than to provide an overcurrent protective device. So although the look and size and feel of them was a standard fuse holder, it was identified as red to make it clear that those were actually points of isolation rather than protective devices. So that may well be the case. Little bit concerned that it's aluminium tube. Obviously that's not so good conductivity, and you've also got the potential for differential metals and the chemical effect that can have with its points of conduction. But that may be the sort of story behind it. But yeah, get confirmation from the BNO. That's absolutely the right thing to do. Would you add anything to that, Dan?
No, it just sounds like a standard red head or red link, as some people call them as well. Yeah, preferably called there for isolation. No, really good that the contractor's using his due diligence and actually, obviously, doing a bit more further investigation work, because we don't want to assume. We never want to assume, because that can always lead to problems. So, no, well done, and I commend the contractor for doing that. But it does sound like what you described there, Sam, as your typical redhead, purely there for isolation. You'll probably hopefully find that once they get confirmation, that there'll be confirmation that there is an upstream protector device somewhere in the system, and it is just there for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Another one that's come in asking for an engineer asking for guidance. To no earth bonding required to new builds, non-extraneous conductive part of a new build development, no bond to gas required when non-metallic pipe work enters the building, so long as the pre-2000 ohms requirement was met from the gas meter to the MET pre-taking over works. Well, what we can say is if you've not got extraneous conductive parts entering the building, then there's no requirement to bond, because we only bond extraneous conductive parts which could introduce a potential. So if you've not got conductive services entering, then there's no need to bond, even if internally those service pipe works changes to metallic conductive copper, for example, for aesthetic reasons, so long as it doesn't re-enter the ground and therefore could reintroduce true earth, then there's no need to bond it, because it will be isolated from the external sources through that plastic pipe coming in. So yeah, it's quite common now for both on new build properties for both gas and water services to be coming in plastic pipe work, and therefore no need to bond then internally. I'm not sure about, you said as long as the pre-2000 ohm figure is. I mean, there are some tests that you can do to determine whether a suspect conductive part is extraneous, and there would be measuring the resistance between that and the incoming earth, but depending upon what you're perceiving as a dangerous current level, so typically if we use 10 milliamps, then we'd be looking at a 22k figure, but so yeah, a little bit higher than 2000 ohms, but yeah, in general we agree, no need to bond where we've got non-metallic service pipe work entering the building.
I think that was a typo. I think that the
gentleman might be 20,000.
22 instead of 2. And I think, yeah, it's very common. Goes a lot of new builds now, and there isn't bonding. And I think it's a bit of a mindset, change as well, Sam, coming from like the 15th edition where you bonded the kitchen sink element and window frames, to now obviously going away for even like not doing main bonding now, I think, and it is a lot alien to a lot of people as well. So I think, yeah, but it is, as you say, if it's not going back into the ground, entering the surface, or becoming extraneous, then there's no need to bond it. So, but you can always check it, as I say, do the resistance measurement. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've got an engineer saying, thanks for the clarification on farm agricultural RCD. It's great as so many existing installations are wrong. Whilst on the subject, can you clarify the use of the supplier's earth on farms, typically fed from overhead lines, single phase transformer on a pole, supplies earth rod at the bottom of the pole with earth provided from the neutral in the farmhouse at the origin. Use this earth terminal or rod every time. So one thing I would say is to check, because sometimes those overhead line supplies with a rod at the bottom of the pole are actually TNCS. So that pole, the earth rod at the bottom of the pole is providing one of your multiple earth locations. So not all overhead lines are TT installations, and check with the DNO in your area, because that's very common to do it that way. Obviously, it's more difficult to put in your multiple earths while the neutral conductor's up in the air, but at every point you've got that opportunity, such as when you've got a transformer that you're tapping off the distribution network, then that's often chosen by the DNOs as the point where they'll put their rod in to reference the neutral, the pen conductor, back to Earth. So check that it may be TNCS, and then you then have got the choice of either using that TNCS supply or converting it to TT. Generally with farms, they talk about a lot of you've got a lot of outbuildings that can be steel structured, so then that's very difficult then to prevent simultaneous access between PME earth and true earth through the metal structure. And also you've got a lot of farm buildings that have got they're open floored, so you know it's the ground, because we're talking about cattle sheds, barns, etc. So again, there would be issues of if somebody stood on the ground and therefore in contact with true earth could also simultaneously access TNCS or PME earth, that they're going to be the conductor between any potential difference, which is quite common. So that would be a strong consideration to think about TT in that installation. Otherwise you may get lots of phone calls, people feeling tingles because they can sense that 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 volts difference between PME earth and true earth. So they're not actually getting an electric shock due to a fault, they're just acting as the conductor between those two potential differences of true earth and PME earth. Next one's a great question, which we're going to wait 2 weeks. What's the rumours with AFDDs in the new regs? So yeah, it is only a rumour at the moment. We all have to wait for 2 weeks to see exactly what's going to happen. We know that was one of the most heavily commented on sections within the DPC, so everybody is definitely waiting to find out.
I think as well, Sam, that highlights the importance of commenting on the DPC as well, which I would always encourage, to comment on, because if I think hopefully what this will show come 28th of March is that some of the comments weren't wasted and they were taken into consideration. So I think it's always important if you can comment on the DP draft public comment, that is, then please do, because power in numbers and it does get considered, so it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that how many times have we read the regs and we've either spotted an editorial issue or we've spotted something that we don't think is right, and we talk about it to somebody and then we don't do anything more. Start your book, start your thing. These are the ones that I'm going to comment on, because there will be another edition, another amendment at some point in time, and then you can bring out all those points that you'd always wanted clarification on. So, and each point will be reviewed by the JPEL panel, so it's well worth doing. Okay, does steel conduit or trunk need earthing if carrying twin and earth and the sheath is maintained throughout the run? Okay, so again, a common question. 7671 tells us that single insulated conductors in conductive containment, such as conduit or trunking, that the conduit will be considered an exposed conductive part and require earthing. Where we've got twin and earth, which is seen to have it's got a sheath and an inner layer of insulation, then it's seen to have characteristics of double insulation, and therefore not a requirement to consider the metalwork as an exposed conductive part. You would need to check just to make sure that the metalwork isn't being used as a circuit protective conductor in addition to the CPC for whatever reason. Perhaps there are other cables as well as the twin and earth in there, for example. But yeah, if all that's in there is twin and earth, there's no requirement to earth because it wouldn't be seen as an exposed conductive part. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, and it's a very similar rationale I think we use for cable tray and basket, etc. and the like, because of the nature of the cables that are actually contained on that containment, for the same reason, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Some guidance earthing system, if you may. Customer wants power running out to a new shed that is being installed for use as a home office. Okay, something that's happening with these changing times. Can I rely on the earth from the house, or do I need to install an earth rod at the shed? And rounded it off perfectly by saying it's a TNCS at the origin. Okay, so there was one of these sort of industry myths that 7671 absolutely prohibits the export of TNCS to outbuildings. It is a myth. There is nothing in 7671 which prohibits the exporting of a TNC earthing arrangement to an outbuilding. There are some considerations. So in particular in this instance, if you had that outbuilding, that shed that's going to be converted to an office, if there are any extraneous conductive parts in that office, so for example you may have a water supply to it, then if you do export TNCS, those are going to have to be bonded all the way back to the MET of the installation within the main building, and those are going to be a minimum of 10 mil earth. So that would suggest that if you're going to put a small supply across to it, 4 mil or 6 mil SWA, you would need to consider, are there any bonding requirements in the shed which is going to actually increase the requirements of my conductor size. Also think about the structure of that remote building. Is it steel structured? Could the steel work be touched from outside with people in contact with true earth? So again, we always suggest trying to minimise or eradicate the possibility of people simultaneously accessing true earth and PME earth, because you are going to get those phone calls about people feeling that potential. And then lastly, you've also got to think about the distances, because the further you go, then the likelihood is that potential difference between PME earth and true earth is going to get larger due to the volt drop in pen conductor. So there's nothing that says you can't, but there's some considerations. So sometimes it's more practical to perhaps use the PME earth to protect the distribution cable out to the remote building, but then TT the remote building itself, so that everything in there, if for example you have got extraneous conductive parts that need bonding, if you have got steel structure, if there's outside class 1 items that can be touched while you stood on true earth. So all of those things would point you to consider a more practical approach of TT in the building, but you wouldn't need to TT the distribution circuit out. And if you do go onto our website, there's some very good articles that we published in our Connections magazine about exporting TNCS supplies to outbuildings, and we did a great webinar towards the middle of last year on the subject as well. So yes, it's feasible, it's not excluded, but there are some considerations to think about. Would you agree with that, Dan?
I think you covered it beautifully, to be fair. So I think, you've really got to look at the installation. You know, it could just be a lot of the time there is no extraneous conductive parts in the outbuilding as well. You know, when you think about it, so it's on the installation. I say it was a myth that you had to do it via a TT. For me, you've always had more than one option. To be fair, so it depends on the circumstances. The risk, the perceived chance of electric shock, etc. So there's a lot of factors to consider, as you say, before you decide what option you choose. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we've got the engineer has come back again about the farms to say they work on farms a lot, so I understand the TT aspect, but he says 90% of existing ones are wrong. So our explanation tonight, going out to 80 plus others, is good. So that's good. Some good instant feedback, which is we're always grateful for.
Definitely.
Okay, and then lastly tonight, again another subject that does come up, and it's it's a justifiable answer, but it's a justifiable question, but there is also a justifiable answer. So We do get this quite a lot. What prevents me, so this is coming from the field, what is it that prevents me from putting a British Standard MCB from one manufacturer into another manufacturer's consumer unit? Isn't the fact that it's got a British Standard enough? So yeah, it's a reasonable question, which we all, when we all first came across this issue, I'm sure we all thought about it ourselves. But yes, my breaker, my RCBO's got the right British Standard. Why can't I put it into a consumer unit or a distribution board provided by another manufacturer? So what's our thoughts on that for compliance with 7671, Dan?
Yes, there's actually a dedicated regulation for this, which I used to refer to a lot out in the field, which is regulation 536.4.203, and it's called the integration of devices and components. Some useful references in here, such as in low voltage assemblies, which are manufactured the BSEN 61439 series, e.g. consumer units, distribution boards. Incorporated devices and components shall only be those declared suitable according to the assembly manufacturer's instructions or literature. Now, there's a note below, note number 1, which is informative. The use of individual components complying with their respective product standards does not indicate their compatibility when installed with other components in low voltage switchgear and control gear assembly. So again, and it goes further as well, because so you already know that, okay, so it's got to be compatible. It's compatibility issues what we're referring to, but then you've got another note number 2, and this is incorporated components inside the assembly can be from different manufacturers, because it is actually allowed in the 61439 series. However, important thing for the installer to know, if an assembly deviates from its visual manufacturing instructions or includes components that are not included in the visual verification, then the person introducing those changes becomes the original manufacturer, and again with the corresponding obligations. So it's saying that you need to think back and consider, but if you are going to change anything, and you're really adamant on that, then really seek manufacturer's approval of that assembly. And if you don't and you still go ahead and do it, just bear in mind you're going to be taking on some of those obligations as a result of those changes that you've made, because it could have a detrimental effect with that, and it could be related to heat, to etc. There's numerous factors that could be involved there. So yeah, something you've got to be mindful of.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'll just flash, just for people's information, I'll flash the regulation that we've talked about there. But yeah, it is. I always remember thinking that we've gone to the point of we've selected our correct breaker. It's got the right British Standard. It's got the right braking capacity. It's got all the right characteristics. So why can't I put it into a different manufacturer's? And it is down to those compatibilities. We've got to almost think of it in two ways. Yes, I've selected the right product, but now I want that product to work with other products in that assembly, that consumer unit assembly, and the manufacturer of that consumer unit assembly will guarantee its characteristics so long as we stick with their rules, and their rules will be that you use their components in association with their manufacturer's instructions. And it's kind of understandable. Well, no, not kind of, it is understandable, because they will have done something often referred to as type testing. So they'll test all of that assembly as a whole with all of its different variations, just with their manufacturer's equipment, to make sure, as you say, that there's no heat issues, that things aren't generating, there's no electromagnetic interference between two, there's no possible inductance issues of one thing actually inducing voltages and currents in other parts of the assembly. So yes, unless you want to take responsibility, which we would suggest is not typical because it's very onerous, then you really need to rely on those manufacturer's instructions. And yeah, they're not doing it as a get out, they're really doing it to confirm that they are the designer of that assembly, and they will guarantee its characteristics, providing you stick with their instructions. So that's where that comes about from. But yeah, no, very, very interesting question, because it's made clear in that set of regulations that that the use of individual components that comply with their respective product standard doesn't indicate that their compatibility when installed with other components will mean that the low voltage switchgear or control gear assembly is compliant. So really an interesting point, and that's the reason why we get concerned about mixed manufacturers equipment within the same assembly. Okay, crazy times again. So again, we just want to make you aware it's a very busy time of life for the electrical industry. We're waiting with bated breath for Amendment 2's publication, which is now less than 2 weeks away. So 28th it actually comes out. Just to let you know, we are doing a series of different types of events to help get the information out there about what's included within Amendment 2. Some of those events include, we've got some local meets, so up and down the country. We've got approximately, well, I know it's exactly 31 different venues around the country, from as far down as Newquay up to Inverness, and they're all scheduled for that week of publication. So the week beginning 28th of April, sorry, 28th of March, 2 weeks today. Those events start and run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They are for our registered contractors, free of charge, but you do need to pre-register so that we've got numbers. So yeah, if you've not done it already, then please go onto the website and have a look at where your local area meetings are. In addition to the local area meetings, we're also going to run a couple of live webinars. That's at 10 a.m. on the day of publication, Monday the 28th, and then a further one at 8 p.m. on Wednesday the 30th. So those two will be live webinars where there'll be an update and an opportunity to ask some questions, and also then there will be some on-demand webinars following those. We're going to take a short break from the Monday night Q&As for 4 weeks, so we won't do it before the publication. We won't be doing one on the day, but we'll be doing a further one 2 weeks after. So the next live Q&A session will be Monday the 11th of April. I just want to thank you for taking part tonight, and for all of those that did put their questions in the chat. We hope that we got round to answering them for you. If we didn't get round to yours tonight, we will store it and use it for one of those to start the next session. But yeah, thanks very much, and we hope you found it informative and useful. Any last words from yourself, Dan?
No, I just hope to see some of you at our events. I'll be attending a few of them. So if you're around the sort of southeast region, you'll probably see me there. So I look forward to seeing you that wants to turn up. As I say, if you do want to register, hopefully it'd be a great start to kick it off. I think you get ahead of the game to understand what's going on, what's involved in the amendments. So by all means, please feel free to come down. So we'll look forward to seeing you. So yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Sam. Really enjoyed it as always. Great cracking questions as always. Love it. So no, well done.
That is, it's good, and it's probably worth saying those. If for whatever reason you can't make those events on the week of publication, that's really just the start. We will be running up further webinars, further Q&A sessions, and of course we've got our articles in our Connections magazine. We were very fortunate to proofread an article about the changes, which is coming up in the next edition of Connections, which is a superb article. I think the rough draft was something like 18 pages of A4, so it was a very, very good detailed walkthrough from front to back of the book as to what the changes are. So that'll be worth getting your hands on as well. So without any further to do, thank you very much to everybody, and I'll just leave you with that reminder that we all know what is coming, and it will be here in less than 2 weeks. So thank you very much, people, and enjoy the rest of your evening.